Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tanner from TanmanBaseballFan.com. I thought I would go ahead and start a podcast here. I'm going to warn you real quick. This is going to be raw. This is going to be rough. There's going to be some awkward pauses because I'm not really sure exactly what I'm doing here. So funny little story. I was actually listening to another podcast, which is pretty interesting to me. They're talking about how audio is really kind of going to be quite possibly the wave of the future because we like to multitask. And I was thinking about that for a while. I was thinking, man, I don't really watch many YouTube videos because I'm always doing 3 other things. But podcasts I can do because I can do other things while I'm listening. So anyways, I do hope that's the same for you. You're probably going to hear me a little out of breath perhaps because I'm out on a nice little brisk walk here. But I'll tell you what, though, it's fun. I was just thinking, I literally downloaded an app on my walk. So this is kind of like a podcast on the fly here. So enough of me talking about that for about a minute and a half now. So I'll go ahead and jump into what I was going to say. I wanted to talk about something that I've gotten into recently as far as baseball card collecting goes. I have an article that's written, and I'm not sure if it's going to be posted, if I'm going to self-publish it. I don't know if it's going to be published on Beckett, because it might be in Beckett Magazine. I don't know. We'll see. But I'll talk a little bit about it here, because it is, quite frankly, wildly interesting to me. And what I'm interested in these days is a time period in baseball that is before there were actually baseball cards. And again, I'm outside, so there's cars that are going by, and I apologize. This is definitely not some kind of professional recorded studio audio or anything like that. But I figured that's okay. If I wait for that, then I'm not gonna do it at all. So anyways, continuing on, probably I want to say around 1886, 1887, those were when some of the first real mainstream baseball cards hit. So we're talking like Old Judge, Allen and Ginter, the real old ones. And might I say, by the way, a lot of people that I talk to, they have no idea how old baseball cards can be. A lot of them will think, well, the first one might be a Mickey Mantle or Babe Ruth or Honest Wagner. But when I start telling people about these cards from the 19th century, oh man, I want to tell you something. Like, it's almost like talking about having like the Declaration of Independence or something. I mean, it's pretty amazing to get feedback from people that don't know about this time period of baseball. So anyways, I do want to go back and turn back the clock a little bit before that, before 1886. So, and we'll go ahead and start around the end of the Civil War. So the Civil War was from 1861 to 1865. And by 1865, baseball was already our national pastime. Like, it was thriving. Everybody loved baseball. So the question is this. I gotta say, by the way, it is cold out here. Like, praise God for cold weather in Houston. I didn't think I'd live to see this again, but this is pretty awesome. So it's kind of getting me to shiver a little bit also while I'm walking. But anyway, so you have all these fans in baseball that were from like 1865, fresh out of the Civil War. And by the way, they did play baseball games during the Civil War as well. But anyways, everybody loves this game, and they have for over 150 years, like quite a bit over 150 years. And so the question is, if everybody loved it, what the heck did they collect if they didn't have baseball cards? So could you imagine living in a time period where there are no baseball cards to collect? Mind-blowing. I know that's not what I want to be doing, is living in a time period like that. But anyways, so get ready to be like fascinated like crazy, if you're anything like me, that is. What they collected are things called woodcuts. Now let me tell you what a woodcut is. And by the way, it wasn't just limited to woodcuts. There's other things as well that they collected. But we're going to focus on woodcuts this evening. So what is a woodcut? A woodcut is something that would be typically found in a publication back in the 19th century called Frank Leslie Illustrated, Harper's Weekly, all kinds of other, not all kinds, there are probably a few others I know of, but the main ones were Leslie Illustrated and Harper's Weekly. So these publications were kind of like newspapers are now today. And the illustrations that they would have would be, I don't want to say drawn, but they're actually carved into blocks of wood. And I'll give you kind of the most rudimentary way of saying what a woodcut is. So you take a block of wood and you take a drawing. Well, what you do after that is you copy that drawing on the piece of wood and you carve it or engrave it into the wood. So when that is done, you would apply ink to the wood, almost like you would ink on a rubber stamp, if that helps you to kind of figure out what's going on there. And then they would stamp it on paper. They would stamp it on as many times as possible, or as many times as they need, which to me, I think is a really cool thing. Like a really cool thing, because it's not like a machine that did this stuff. These woodcuts are actually like you could consider them originals, just like you could like a Picasso lithograph hanging in a museum, because they're handmade or made by handmade tools. And so anyways, that kind of adds to the charm of these pieces. So anyways, that's how they would replicate pictures. And I'll tell you kind of a little bit of the history of woodcuts. So they started first of all, y'all, like several centuries ago. And they're very crude, very rudimentary, very simple looking, but that's how they would replicate pictures and books and everything for centuries, is by doing these woodcuts, because they didn't have printing technology or anything like that, right? And even the photograph technology didn't come along. It was I think it's called halftone is what it's called, and I think that was really more prevalent in the 1890s. But before that, they just didn't have the technology really to print at scale these photographs. So what they ultimately started doing is, before that, for instance, for the Civil War, is they would send a few artists down on the battlefield and draw what they see. And first of all, I couldn't imagine that. It's insane. But anyway, so when they're done with their drawing, they would bring them back to these engravers. And so the engravers would take these pictures and they would do their best to copy on the wood. And they would actually split the wood blocks up into several chunks. So several people could be working on this engraving of this big picture at the same time, because it's a very tedious process. And really it was like in art in and of itself, because a lot of these woodcuts, they're beautiful. I mean, they're amazing. But anyways, you'll have like this huge like landscape of battle in the Civil War, and you see people and horses and fighting and all that. It's really incredible. And I think we have a lot to give thanks for on these woodcuts, because otherwise we wouldn't really have be able to have much of a picture of what past events were, aside from a few photographs, because they did have photographs back then, of course. But anyway, so this isn't about the Civil War, though. So this is about baseball, of course. So here's where it gets interesting and exciting for you and for me as well. What they would do before baseball cards is they would actually make woodcuts of baseball players and baseball teams, which is pretty stinking awesome, I gotta say. Because some of these guys on these woodcuts that they did, they don't even have baseball cards, and this is like really kind of the only way that you can realistically own something. So like I said, the woodcuts would be like of entire teams, or they would be of single players. And a lot of times they'd be like championship teams or something, every now and then they would have like once on a blue moon, they'd have like a front page full illustration of a star player like Buck Ewing or something. As a matter of fact, he's the only one that comes to mind that had a cover, if I remember correctly. But anyways, so as time went by, they got a little more slick and sophisticated with their woodcuts. And they actually developed a way, from my understanding anyway, how to develop a photograph directly onto the wood, so that way they can engrave it and have more realistic looking woodcuts. And so if you look at any of these woodcuts, they're just incredible. I mean, you look at them and you see like kind of like the grain and everything inside the ink and all that. It's really awesome. But anyway, so you'll have all these players that a lot of people don't know about. Like, let me ask you a question here. Do you know who the first person in professional baseball history was to hit a home run? So, who hit the first home run? My guess is that probably 90+% of you don't know who that is. And that's okay, because guess what? I didn't either. I didn't either until about a few months ago. There's a baseball player by the name of Ross Barnes. He was the first player to hit a home run. Now, you'd think that he would hold some sort of special place in the hearts and minds of all of us baseball fans and baseball card collectors, but nope. I don't think the guy has any baseball cards, I don't think. Like back then during his playing days, he might, but I don't think so. Guess what? He has a woodcut, which is really awesome. Same thing with Al Spalding, George Wright, Harry Wright. I mean, they've got some cards, but super expensive. But they've got a few woodcuts. And one thing that's probably, I'll tell you a couple of my favorites. And by the way, y'all, check out my site at tanmanbaseballfan.com. That article will be up at some point, and you can actually see pictures of these things. They're fairly affordable too, which is really cool. So, and we're talking like a lot of these woodcuts can go, that have like Hall of Famers on it for like $100, $200, sometimes even less, which is really cool. So, anyways, I'll go ahead and talk about the three pieces that probably mean the most to me. Actually, probably talk about two of them. So, the first one is actually the reason why all of the baseball players have the 150th anniversary sleeve patch. I don't know if you noticed this, but the entire season, almost all, if not all, teams have this 150th anniversary patch. I noticed during the division series between the Astros and Rays, the Rays didn't. They had a patch that had like somebody's initials, and that's typically done to commemorate somebody who passed away that was meaningful to that team. So I don't know if that was just for the playoffs or if they did that all year. I wasn't really paying attention to them during the season. But anyways, so a lot of people haven't really thought much about the 150-year thing. So you go back 150 years to 1869. That was the first professional team in baseball, the Cincinnati Red Stockings. And they actually have a woodcut. And so I've been grateful to have been able to pick up one of them. Two of them, actually. One in free form and one in the actual entire publication. And I'm walking by a bicycle now in the grass. That's kind of weird. Anyway, so it's pretty cool to have something like that, because you actually have a graphical representation of the entire team from something that's original from 1869, which is really just, it's mind-blowing to me. And my guess is probably that the average collector doesn't know about these things. And, let's be honest, they're not ever going to be nearly as collectible or as accepted as baseball cards are, because they're bigger and they're harder to store. They're not in full color. And frankly, a lot of the stars from the 19th century nobody knows about. So And I say nobody, I say that term loosely because there's a lot of people that do. They just want to, but those that do want to keep it quiet, so that way the prices don't shoot up on everybody. But anyways, yeah, it's something that I'd highly recommend having because it really is a piece of baseball history and really, to an extent, American history. So, go check it out. It's, I think it was in Harper Weekly. If you are interested, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter at tanmanbbfan.com or Facebook, Tanner Jones. Email tanmanbaseballfan@gmail.com. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on these because I can't remember off the top of my head what publication they came in, but they're routinely reprints of these that are sold online. They look like they're supposed to be original, so be careful on those. But they normally sell for $13-14 just for the reprint. But anyway, which is fine if you're into reprints, go for it. But so much cooler having something that's like Civil War era, and so to think about, I think probably part of the reason why I love this so much is I have this like picture in my head of these kids from the 1800s like scampering to their dad's magazine or newspaper or whatever, asking, begging, pleading, can I please have page 13 or whatever it is, where the Red Stockings are there, where a picture of Cap Anson is, or King Kelly, or Big Hoss Radbourne, or any of these other guys. Can I please, Buck Ewing, who else? Who is his pitcher? Timothy Keefe, Sir Timothy. Trying to think of some other guys. Roger Connor, Dan Bruthers. Just there's so many. It's such a rich history. There's so many people, so many awesome players with fantastic stories. It's fun to research this stuff also, and it's equally as fun to be able to have something that represents the game and these players, to almost have like a personal connection. But anyways, back to what I was saying though, kind of fun to picture in your mind kids in the 19th century. It spans like three centuries ago, like we're in the 21st, last was 20th, and then before that is the 19th century. I mean, a whole other world. These kids going to their parents or whatever saying, please can I have this page for my collection, and cut it out and put it in my album and stuff, because that was a big thing back then. And also, just as a little rabbit trail here for you, one thing that's interesting is we always wonder, well, I'd probably back up. I don't think we always wonder. I don't think anybody's really wondered this before, but where did we get the term trading cards? Well, back in the 19th century, they actually would sell these pieces that were meant for advertising pieces, and they would be lithographs a lot of times. They would be die cut, beautiful pieces that would sell like baking soda or glue or whatever, and they would have beautiful artwork, and people would actually collect these, and they would call them trade cards because these cards were made to advertise somebody's trade. So there they are, trade cards. What we have now, baseball cards, or trading cards. Anyways, so this would be like a family affair a lot of times. So they would, people would collect these things, whether it be for baking soda or for, some sort of tonic or whatever. Like they would collect all these trade cards, as well as these woodcuts, and they would paste them in albums, and that would be their collection because they didn't have baseball cards back then, really. So really cool to think about. But anyways, the last piece I want to tell you about is a piece that I'm actually super excited because I was able to get my hands on finally after looking for quite a while on it. And it is the 1865, November 4th, 1865, I believe, Leslie's Illustrated issue. And I want to tell you why it's like super important. It's like the holy grail of all woodcuts. First of all, like Y'all, if you ever get a chance, find a 19th century publication and just read it. Just read the advertisements and stuff. It's crazy. There's so many strange things that they talk about and that they advertise, and whole different world. But anyways, I love it. I love it, and really a 21st century PC nation that we're in right now would definitely not approve. So you kind of read this stuff, you're like, holy cow, I can't believe they said this stuff back then. But like I said, another time period altogether. But this November 4th, 1865, Leslie's Illustrated, the Holy Grail of Woodcuts. I'll tell you why. It's mainly because of a certain player by the name of Jim Creighton. Not sure if you've ever heard of Jim Creighton before or not. Again, I'm going to have to raise my hand on this because I didn't know who this guy was until several months ago myself. Okay, so it's okay, be honest with yourself. Admit that you hadn't heard of this guy if you hadn't. But anyways, and interestingly enough, I found out that on Homer at the Bat, the Simpsons episode where they had all the baseball players come in, they actually, Mr. Burns was with Smithers, and they were talking in his office, and they were building like a dream team, so to speak. And Mr. Burns was insistent on getting some of these old-time players, and he called out Jim Creighton as one of them. Smithers, get me Creighton. And Smithers was like, well, sir, that's impossible because he's been dead for over 130 years or something like that. I didn't know what they were talking about back then. I had no idea who these people were when the show first aired. But I thought it was pretty cool to, after I found out about who Jim Creighton was, to go back and go, oh, holy crap, the Simpsons actually talking about him. So anyways, kind of cool, kind of really cool. Now, why is this cool? Who is this Jim Creighton guy? Well, I'll be happy to tell you, actually. Turns out that he was baseball's first superstar ever. Again, this guy should have like a monument or something in Major League Baseball history. I mean, it's incredible. I'll tell you about him a little bit, just as much as I can remember while I'm on my walk here. And I love this story. So back in the 1860s, baseball was actually pitched underhand. So you think about that for a second. We're watching these guys like Justin Verlander and Garrett Cole. I mean, these guys are hitting like 100 miles an hour sometimes. Baseball up until 1884 was underhand. And just think about that for a second. To me, that's incredible, because back then the point was to try to get the ball into play. So what Jim Creighton was able to do, he was able to figure out how to snap his wrist a certain way, and the ball would be really unpredictable. Nobody could hit the guy. And he was rather controversial because everybody said, hey, this guy is not doing it right. And Creighton says, well, what are you talking about? I am adhering to all the rules. I am pitching underhand, and nobody can say anything about it. So as a result, the dude was a beast, and he quite possibly was the first player to have been paid, under the table, of course, for services, but pretty darn interesting. He was also an incredible hitter as well. And this was, I think, his last year. He was only 21 years old at this point, but he ended up dying. And this is where the story gets even more interesting. And this is, I think this is a story that was perpetuated by Al Spalding, who's been known to be like kind of a storyteller, even though he was like one of, he'd be on the, what do you call it? The, what's that thing? I can't think of it. It's the, that dang mountain with the 4 presidential faces. My name's escaping me completely. He would be one of those guys anyways. That's what I'm saying. His face would be on one of those. And so, but he was a sales guy. You know, he was an entrepreneur. He wanted to promote excitement. But nevertheless, here's how the legend goes. Jim Creighton comes up to bat in 1862. He swings at the pitch, hits a home run. Now, he twists his body so badly, he ends up having some sort of like an internal injury. The next day, he dies. How weird is that? So I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. That's what I've heard. Some people have speculated perhaps it was on the cricket field that happened, but it sounds like to me that he was playing baseball or some derivative of it. That's just kind of a more pretty way of saying cricket, I guess, and that's also false. But anyways, it sounds to me like it is quite possible that this happened, which is wildly interesting to me. So anyways, the point of this whole story is, in 1865, this guy was such a big deal that 3 years post-mortem, so 3 years after he died, they did a woodcut of monuments of him, like looking down at the championship team of that time period, which is the Brooklyn Atlantics, who, by the way, were the first team that were the first sports team ever to be invited to the White House, which is wild, right? But anyway, so Jim Creighton is actually looking down on this team, and it's kind of like this hauntingly beautiful picture from over a century and a half ago, and really cool. It's a 2-page spread, and I gotta get it framed because these woodcuts look beautiful framed. But anyway, so that is the holy grail of woodcuts, because primarily Creighton didn't have any baseball cards. In fact, he didn't really have hardly any woodcuts either. So that's the big daddy. It's one of the only things out there of baseball's absolute first superstar. So the one other piece to this is, you look down the page to the right, there's a bearded man, and he's got this hat on, and I believe he's the only one that doesn't have a name associated with him. And so it's been a long time speculated that it was the earliest depiction of the father of baseball, Henry Chadwick. So I was fortunate enough to land the entire issue that this woodcut had in it, or that this woodcut was in. And, ooh, hang on one second. Y'all, I found 30 cents on the ground. You better believe I'm not going to pass that up. Anyway. So, Henry Chadwick. People have thought that this was him, but they just didn't know. There's a lot of speculation. So, because I was able to pick up the entire issue, I decided to look through the entire issue and see if there was anything that talked about it. And sure enough, on the back page, it talks about the bearded man named Henry Chadwick, which was really awesome, because he doesn't have much in the way of pictures of him out there, and certainly this is widely considered to be his earliest depiction, the earliest depiction of him, which is awesome. And so it's kind of like a real nice 1-2 punch. So you've got baseball's first superstar and the father of baseball all in the same piece. So we're running up on about 30 minutes. Guys, it's so funny. Like, I'm talking and about baseball stuff, and it feels like 5 minutes. It really does. So really hope that you enjoy listening to some of this. Hopefully this educates you a little bit, and hopefully this is intriguing enough for you to at least do a little bit of research on this as well. Like I said, they're very affordable when they come up, and there's one other, just as kind of like a little bonus, a bonus woodcut to tell you about, and a bonus little factoid about baseball. So baseball was so big back in the 1860s. they actually did some exhibition games on ice skates. So you imagine like Yasiel Puig and all these guys out on skates playing baseball. That'd be hilarious. But anyways, and the bonus woodcut I want to tell you about is there's this really fun woodcut that they created. I've got a couple of them myself, and it's titled something like "Is This the Future of Baseball?" And there are literally people rounding the bases on horseback. So they thought that was going to be the next big thing in our national pastime. So anyways, like I said, guys, I hope you enjoy hearing about this stuff. Like I said, sorry it's not polished or anything. I know it's, like I said, I know it's rough and raw, and but literally that's what it is. I'm on my walk at night, and I'm talking on my phone as I'm thinking of things. So anyways, hope this has kept you entertained and has educated you a little bit. And like I said, hit me up, say hi, ask questions, here for you. So Twitter, TanmanBBFan, Facebook, Tanner Jones, email, tanmanbaseballfan@gmail.com, and my website, tanmanbaseballfan.com. Don't know when I'm going to be doing the next one, but I don't know if I get a good response on this, or if I'm just feeling it the next time I'm out here, I'll post up another one if I have baseball on the brain, and I always do when I'm walking. So y'all have a great night.